Greetings. Welcome all. Sorry for the delay. Had a few technical issues on my end, but thank you all who are already showing up and joining us for today's live stream. We are talking about the Head Orisha, right? In the Ifa tradition, what that means, what it looks like, talking about some misconceptions, explaining those misconceptions, things like that that often come up when it comes to the notion of a head orisha. Guys, if you're watching it live, definitely feel free to drop any comments or questions or things like that that you have related specifically to this topic, because I'm only addressing issues specific to the head orisha in this live stream. And also, I am not going to be talking about traits or characteristics of specific head orishas. Instead, we're talking about the global concept, what it is, what it means to connect with your head orisha, things like that. If you are watching the replay, please feel free to go ahead and drop your questions on whatever platform you are on rather in the comment section. So, got a few people joining already on both platforms on multiple platforms rather. Greetings to everybody coming up on Instagram. I can't put you on the screen, but on other platforms, greetings, Lady Diana Songbird. Greetings, Liquid Load TV, Asaju, and Joshua 2011. Okay. So welcome, and greetings all. Thank you for joining. Greetings, Faye, and everybody everywhere. Welcome. So we're gonna just jump right into the topic and start with like what is the head orisha, kind of defining the concept. Then I'll get into many of the questions that you guys asked prior to the session, because you did have quite a few questions. You know what? I just realized I forgot to cover the pre-episode questions. So I'll probably put that like on YouTube hereafter. Forgive me for that. And thank you everybody who did participate in that survey. I forgot to grab it, unfortunately. Greetings. What is it? ZXM. I don't know how to say the full handle, but greetings and welcome to everybody again. So going into the concept of a head orisha, right? So this is what they call your guardian or your tutelary orisha, right? That's the specific orisha that is linked to your head, right? This part of your body, literally and figuratively. I won't say figuratively. I guess it should be more so like metaphysically. So literally and metaphysically, this is the orisha or the force that is linked to your head, and it is based on your destined path. Why is it the head orisha? Because it governs this part of your body. Your head is where your brain is housed. It's the part of you that governs all aspects of you. So that's why you're said to have a head orisha, an orisha or an energetic force that serves to guide your thought process, how you behave, what you say, all of those different things. That is what the head orisha does. Now, in some aspects of the tradition, you will hear people say that you have a head orisha and an orisha that governs your feet, which in my opinion, it doesn't really make sense, because when you say head orisha, we're talking about the head. The head governs every aspect of our bodily function. Absolutely, we have orisha forces that operate within us and through us and within our environment at every level. But the head orisha is the one that's closely connected to the way you operate or function as a person in day-to-day life, right? And likewise, like even with the physical body, your feet do not operate in and of themselves. No other part of your body does. Everything operates from your control center, where your brain is. That is what causes us to function in the way that we do, or even so not function, right? So if you have a part of your body that is not working properly, it actually stems from what's going on in your brain. It does not stem from that particular body part in and of itself. It's about those synapses and those connections, those neurological connections from, your brain to that part of your body. And so you can think about the Head Orisha in a very, very similar way. I got a few hidden beauty. Greetings, greetings. Welcome. Thank you for joining as always. So you're saying over here on Instagram, I heard it's rare, but we are some people blessed with two heads. We are going to get into that. It's usually the case that a person has two orishas that strongly resonate with their head, and it can be difficult to determine which one is the strongest, depending on who is doing the reading or what have you. But really, in true Isheshe practice, it's only one, right? So again, think about it. We're talking about the head. We only have one head, right? That's the container. We only have one head. Every human only has one head, right? Technically, that houses our brain, again, that functions in that way. So that's why you would have one head orisha. That doesn't mean that you don't have other orishas closely connected to you, because many people absolutely do. But to say you actually have two head orishas is usually not going to be the case. I won't say ever at all, but that's not according to standard traditional teachings, and we have to keep that in mind too. Greetings, our Odessa. Thank you for joining. So we have to keep that in mind as well, that we're talking about this from an Isheshe. I am discussing this from an Isheshe perspective. There are so many different derivatives of the tradition where you do have, you know, varying degrees of knowledge in the way people interpret things. So this is coming from, the Elated I work with out of Nigeria, and that's where, my source information derives. So also, this Orisha governs how you live, how you behave. Like I said before, even so your temperament, the challenges that you are going to experience in life, even so the opportunities that are just divinely available to you in your day to day life. Your head Orisha is said to have claimed your head at birth. So it's just going to strongly influence every aspect of who you are as an individual. Right? So why does an Orisha choose you, and what does it actually mean for that Orisha to walk with you in your day-to-day experience? So your head Orisha chooses you based on their position, where they were in the cosmos at your time of birth. All right. So this force is basically heavily connected to the destiny that you chose, because when you chose your destiny, you already chose your destiny before you came to the earth. It chose to come into the earth at a specific time, understanding which heavenly forces were at play and which energetic forces were around or would be around you during that particular time. So that means it's purposeful. It's not like random that you just, you're born and just whatever orishas were there. You chose to be born at a certain time because these specific orishas would be around based on the lessons that you chose to learn while you were on earth. That being the case, that Orisha is going to be strongly connected to those lessons and what you do, and who you become, who you are as a whole throughout your life. Now, Ori, and I saw somebody say Ori. I didn't really understand the context there, but I was going to get to it. Herein, this is a question that I received. Is the Head Orisha and Ori the same? Absolutely not. So your Ori and your Head Orisha are definitely closely tied to each other, but they are not the same forces. They're both energetic forces for sure, because we have that root word Ori at both. Ori is the self, the inner head, the higher self. There are two dimensions of Ori in that regard. The part that's here with you, your inner head, okay? And then you also have the higher self, that's in a room, that's in the heavens. Okay. So Ori, that's gonna be the seed of your destiny. That's what chose your destiny. That's what's going to guide your destiny throughout this life. So that is like your overriding connection to your divine purpose. Your head Orisha, on the other hand, is actually a universal divine force. All right. So Orishas are everywhere, they operate with everyone, whereas your Ori is specific and very much so personal to you. That's your personal divinity. But the Orishas help out everybody. That's why you have multiple people with the same head Orisha. Okay. And they're going to still operate a little bit differently in everybody's life based on the lessons that they have to learn. So it's not like I got Oshun as my head Orisha. That means that I'm going to be wealthy, right? That doesn't mean I have Shango as my head Orisha and I'm going to be royalty, right? That's not how that works. Either it's a spectrum. Each energy has a spectrum. So depending on what lessons you have to learn, depending on the position that you come into the earth, determines at what degree or angle, or however you want to say it, that you connect with that head Orisha functioning. So you could fall at the very opposite end of that spectrum and have to work your way up to the glorious or the good parts that people often tend to want to experience when it comes to this head Orisha dynamic, right? And so your head Orisha, right, is designed to assist you, to guide you, to lead you, to walk with you. But your Ori is ultimately responsible for fulfilling your destiny as a whole. And it's going to have a whole lot of help in that process. But the ability of you to access the help from your head Orisha and other Orisha is going to be dependent primarily on your relationship with your Ori. And I'm going to get to that a little bit later on as well. So I'm going to use this analogy throughout. Think about your Ori as yourself, because it is yourself, right? Your Ori is you. Your head Orisha functions more so like a parent or a guardian in the earthly realm. And this is an example so that people can understand these correlations or connections. These are not exact, but I will be using this example throughout the live stream just to help you to understand how that correlates, and to just contextualize it, because it helped me a lot to understand it from this particular level. Got a few questions. Greetings. Alrighty, so let's see. Do some interesting. Okay, let's see. Gotta get this person out of here. Sorry about that. For the rudeness, you disagree. Is this the same person? Um, Okay. Well, you have a right to disagree, and I would encourage you to go ahead and on your own platform and talk about how you disagree with the context. But moving forward to what I was saying. So now, is Ori itself considered an Orisha in the Ifa tradition? Absolutely. Ori is honored as an Orisha. However, again, like I said, Ori is your personal divinity. It is not a universal governing force and things like that. Okay. So it does have those, qualities of spirituality that are connected to it, because it is a spiritual force. Absolutely. You have that aspect that's within you, and you have the aspect that is within the heavens. All right. So, but that is the difference. You're saying keep dropping knowledge, Queen. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Okay. So you're asking me, can I debate with you on live based on science? Not at all. If you want to debate this topic, please feel free to go to your own platform and do so, because I am not entertaining it. That's not why I showed up here. I showed up here for the people who want to hear this knowledge and wisdom that I'm bringing, and I want to honor their time. So I'm going to get back to the conversation. Okay. So Ori is regarded as supreme over all other Orishas because that is what chose your destiny, as I said before. Now, let's see. What's going on? He said, "This is a class, brother. Please take it." So thank you. I appreciate that so much beside you. All righty. Okay. Thank you all for your support. I really appreciate it. He said, "Okay, forgive me." Yeah, go ahead and do whatever you feel like you need to do. Definitely is what this is saying. Take it to your page, tell it to the world. I'm pretty sure there'll be plenty of people willing to hear you, and you're very welcome to Instagram. I appreciate you all for this. Okay, so moving forward. I'm gonna stay composed. Hopefully, Ogun won't get the best of me today, y'all. So, how is your destiny connected to Ori and your head Orisha, right? So, your destiny is chosen by Ori before birth. Ori carries that destiny into the world, as I said before. Your head Orisha supports Ori in fulfilling your destiny, providing that structure, that guidance, that balance, and teaching you lessons. So here again, if we go back to the structure of Ori being yourself, you have the right to do whatever you choose to do, regardless of what's going on around you, whatever guidance you receive, right? Whereas your parents, those are those governing forces that bring you into the earth, and in an ideal situation, they're with you from birth and throughout your ages until you become an adult and can fully function within your own self. So your parents are going to provide that guidance. You have the choice whether to listen to and obey that guidance or not. They're going to provide the structure. You're going to take on even so a lot of the attributes of your parents in many cases, especially if you are raised by them. And therein lies the concept of you having a head Orisha, a one head Orisha, which I'm going to get to that later on too. Somebody did ask about it, but I do want to talk about it right here quickly. So a lot of people will say, well, you have two parents, so why don't you have two head Orishas? Even when you have two parents, there's one parent that you tend to be around the most, right? Not even necessarily that you have more attributes related to them, but there's one parent that will tend to care for you. A lot of times in society is the mother figure who is going to feed you, take care of you, especially at the beginning of your life, even so nurse you. Even as you grow older, she may be the one picking you up from school, taking you to doctor's appointments. Could be the dad as well. And sometimes those responsibilities are almost equally shared, if not equally shared. It's really hard to say it's a perfect balance there. But again, in most instances, there's still one parent that is going to have that primary domain of control or governance over you, even if you may be more so like your other parent, or you may even so like your other parent more so than the parent that is taking care of you primarily. But there's that notion of still there is one primary source that is going to be closer connected to you. And because you have that one parent around you and telling you what to do and showing you what to do, they're 9 times out of 10 going to have more influence over your life, especially in the earlier stages of your life. Now, as you grow older, just like with the parent-parental relationship, there will be a space where you start to go off on your own, learn different things, be around friends more, relatives, teachers, and eventually you'll leave out of the house, get married, and you probably won't even be around your parent that much anymore, depending on the nature of your relationship, your location, so forth and so on, right? And so that's going to impact that connection where you'll probably start to see, especially as you get older, oh, okay, my parents did this, but now I want to do it in this way, right? this way it suits me, it suits the person that I am with. And it's kind of the same way you're going to navigate a connection with your head Orisha. Again, this is an analogy, it's not perfect because, of course, that scenario is a little bit different. We're talking about those governing forces, okay? And you're saying, and parents don't always agree with each other, and that's true. That's an important part of the dynamic as well, and it's going to shape who you become as a person, right? So those are some of the intricacies, so to speak. All right. So, does honoring your Ori improve alignment with your head Orisha? Absolutely, absolutely. So very important, right? So when you're honoring your Ori, it is going to impact every aspect of your life. It's like when you honor yourself, when you respect yourself, you're doing things to maintain obedience, you're respecting your parents and so forth and so on. You are honoring yourself. And when you do that, whenever you honor yourself and you put yourself in a space of self-respect and you revere yourself, automatically and again, when I say this parent-child dynamic, I'm talking about an ideal situation. I'm not talking about a lot of the dysfunctionality that we see in society. So please don't equate it to that if you come from that particular angle, right? So when we're talking about an ideal parent-child scenario, when you connect, I mean, when the child is doing well, they're obedient, they're taking care of themselves well, right? They're doing well in school, so forth and so on, the relationship with that parent is automatically enhanced because then that's the less the parent has to do to keep you on track. They don't have to punish you all the time. They don't have to stay on you and watch you constantly so that you get your work done and things like that. And when a child obeys their parents, it just makes life easier. The parent typically cherishes that child more so. But when a child is disobedient and always misbehaving, what happens? They pull things from the parent, doesn't give them the things that they want in a lot of cases. And so that's kind of a scenario too, like with Ori. When you're aligned with Ori and you're doing the things right, you're more likely to get the things that you want from your parents. Even if they can't get it for you in the moment, they'll try their best to do so. But if you are out of alignment, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, what happens? Your parents oftentimes withhold something from you. Same thing with Ori. When you're not in alignment, Ori does not allow that head Orisha to act in your on your behalf in the same way. Right? It doesn't mean you won't get any of the blessings, but sometimes they're gonna come a little bit, lopsided, or they'll definitely come with some kind of lesson attached to it. So you might get what you want, but then it comes in a position of hardship or struggle, etc. So those dynamics are important as well. What happens when someone focuses on their head Orisha but neglects their Ori? Okay. When you do this, which obviously is not a good thing, you're usually going to experience so much confusion, so many obstacles, so much imbalance in your life because herein, you're not focusing on the core of who you are, your divine purpose or things like that. So an example here would be, think about somebody, you have a purpose in life and you even have natural inclinations and you want to do things in life. But, in a not so ideal world where a parent tries to teach their child to live, well, when a parent rather tries to live vicariously through their child and they're telling their child, they want their child to, let's say, for instance, become a medical doctor, right? So I was born in 78 and that was the thing back then. I know it's changed now. But in those scenarios, doctor, lawyer, those were the main professions. But the child doesn't want to be there. Let's say the child wants to be an artist, right? That's naturally within them, but they're trying to please their parents. So they choose to go and pursue a career in the medical profession as a medical doctor, where they may have all kind of stumbling blocks. They might not, easily get in college for it, or even if they do, they may have challenges passing tests. And even if they get through all of that, They might have challenges in the workforce constantly because they don't really like what they're doing. They're just trying to please their parents, and they didn't stop to see what they need to do to appease the inside of them. So it can kind of work like that. That being said, it's not that the Orishas are going to try to tell you to do something that is out of alignment with your destiny or with your Ori. I'm just using that as an example so you can kind of get the idea of what that looks like, because that's where so many people love to start with. They start learning about the tradition and they want to jump to their Head Orisha. What is my Head Orisha? Right? And not even being their fault, because a lot of times in the diaspora, that's usually your first orientation to the tradition is the Orishas. There's some people that don't hear about Ori until years later, okay, until much, much later after they've been studying it, even so practicing in some cases, where they start to really learn about the importance of Ori. They may hear it, but it just doesn't, it's not talked about enough, right? The Orishas just get most of the attention, and then most people want to know who is governing my head, because a lot of this, social media interplay that we have in today's world. So that's kind of a way to get it. That coming over here. Yeah, I appreciate your wisdom, Queen. Gotta head back to work, but I'll be on the lookout for future live streams. Peace and love. Thank you. And you can catch it on YouTube on the replay. Appreciate you showing up. Okay, so now how do you find out who your Head Orisha is, right? And that's going to be through formal Ifa initiation, right? Through somebody who knows what they're doing. They can go and cast the proper divination tools and determine what that is. It is not something like just overwhelmingly hard. And I understand why people think this, because um there's this trend where people will separate that out and say, get a Head Orisha reading, and it's usually maybe 2 or 3 times the normal cost of an Ifa divination, and everybody has the right to do it the way they choose to do it, but it is not something that is just so much more complicated than going through the process of like Ifa divination or Ifa reading. You can depending on the diviner, like definitely we do it. If you want to know who your Head Orisha is, you can get a regular Ifa reading, and we can tell you that in that particular reading. Some people don't do it that way, so you have to ask them about their particular process. Okay. Another question I got is, can your Head Orisha be determined remotely or online? So if by remotely this question came in the position that you're asking if you can like get an online remote reading and they determine your Head Orisha, absolutely. If it's done through the proper divinatory protocol, no issue with that. That being said, if you're saying online from the perspective of like going online to take a quiz or something like that, or somebody doing a tarot reading, no, like that's not it. So it has to be through the Ifa tradition. It's not going to happen through somebody, pulling a card for you. And I absolutely love tarot, do tarot readings myself, but that's not the way that your Head Orisha is determined at all. And if somebody is telling you that, you need to run away from them, because that is not proper or correct. You can't go online. There's no like, quiz tool or something that you can take, and it comes out and be like, well, you have all of these different traits, and so you are linked to this particular Orisha. No, that doesn't happen either. It has to be through the Ifa divination system. Well, it has to be through the divination system. I want to say Ifa divination specifically, because I don't know for sure, but I imagine that there are Olorishas who can do it. And I know they don't use Ifa divination all the time, depending on what Orisha that they're connected to. They do their own forms of divination. Can different priests give different answers about your head, supposed to be your Head Orisha? Yes, this happens I said sometimes, but unfortunately, it's starting to happen quite often, right? But this is not the proper protocol. This is not standard practice. Like your head Orisha should be coming in the same position, regardless of who you get the reading from. And then there may be some discrepancies. Again, like I said before, it could be two, really close time Orishas, and maybe the proper checking doesn't happen to determine which one is truly the closest that's connected to you. And so there could be discrepancies there. Obviously, there could be discrepancies when the reading isn't done accurately. Okay. But in general, it should be the same all the time, regardless of who is doing the reading. Okay. You all asked too, why would one Babalawo say your head or reach is different from another that was previously identified? Basically, what I just said before, right? Usually the reading is just not conducted properly. One or both of the readings could not be performed properly. What do you do in those scenarios? So it's up to you. You can go and confirm again through somebody else if you like, or you can see with yourself and just figure out which one truly resonates with you the most. I feel like we just kind of intuitively know this. I've told my story before. Like I was, originally told Ogun by an Ianifa, then another Ifa priest I went to told me two different Orishas. I think he said Oshun first, and then after that, in another reading, I don't even think he realized that he had told me the prior time. He came back and said Shango. And then, of course, when I started working with Awadissa, came back to Ogun. And, like Ogun just have resonated with me personally from the door, even though I have a whole lot of other energies that are closely connected with me. I definitely see myself in Ogun's energy, right? And so happy I wore his Lakers today. So I can keep that diplomatic aspect of Ogun with me. But I definitely have that side of him where, the anger can come out, the warrior energy can get really, really heated. That resonated with me. Even so, Shanko a little bit, I just don't feel connected to that energy. I just didn't feel it in the same way. Oshun is closely connected to me, but she's not my head Orisha, and I just never felt that when I was told, because I'm not a very, very feminine person, feminine woman, and there are some effeminate men who are not like within the LGBT community, like they're naturally effeminate because Oshun is their head Orisha, so they may have more feminine qualities than masculine qualities. But that doesn't say anything necessarily about their sexual orientation. Okay, another question is, at what point in life should someone find out their head Orisha? So this is completely up to you. There's no specific age or time frame that you can do this or you should do that. It's not really important the timing. What is important though, guys, is why do you want to find out? All right. Obviously, you can go and find out anytime you desire, but what is the point? It should not just be, I want to find out my head Orisha just to know, or as a flex or something like that, because so many times that's what people are doing in the diaspora, because they learn about this concept. They learn like, who am I tied to? Who am I connected with? And I get it, right? Because it's also definitely part of you learning more about your identity, especially for those of us who have been separated from that notion of our identity. That being said, it's important for you to understand who your head Orisha is so that you can align with their force. It's not just about knowing, who my head Orisha is. What are you going to do with that information? That's the most important aspect of it. Does everyone have a head Orisha, even non-practitioners? Absolutely. Everybody was born with a governing force, right? A lot of times you see this in other cosmological systems. We see this in Western astrology with the notion of a sun sign or moon sign. Well, Western astrology focuses on the sun sign. Vedic astrology focuses on your ascendant, so that would be considered more like the head Orisha functionality and things like that. And I'm going to get to some questions related to those notions. And even in other like Catholicism, they have like the patron saints and stuff like that. It's pretty much the same kind of notion. That doesn't mean that your head Orisha will one for one correlate to the attributes of the other energies, the deities, the planets, the zodiacs, whatever you want to call it, in whatever system that you're using. A lot of that definitely has to do with us not being 100% synchronized. A lot of those deities, especially in the Caribbean, were synchronized with like patron saints and things like that, but they weren't always assigned the exact same quality. So there is high correlation there, right? And it may even so be that you see this energy, your head Orisha, show up in some form or another. Because I'll even use myself an example, like with Ogun being my head Orisha. My moon is actually in Aries. Aries is governed by Mars, which is the god of war, which would be a synchronized force with Ogun. But you can't always give them like exact one-on-one characteristics because of the dilution that has gone on throughout the years with the different systems. So I hope that makes sense to you guys, right? All right. So whenever you're participating in Ifa, that's going to determine your connection with the head Orisha function, right? Like as far as giving offerings and even so initiating, getting lekis, whatever it may be. Whereas in other systems, you don't have that same level of correlation when it comes to the westernized systems in particular. And we're talking about African traditional systems. That's a whole nother ballgame because they have their own concept of a head Orisha. They just don't call it the same thing, but they do have that concept, and you can connect with their force in whatever tradition that you are working with. Okay. Another question: which Orishas can serve as a person's head or guardian spirit? So, in many instances, most of the major Orishas, can absolutely claim your head at birth. There are some exceptions. So, Egbe Orun does not serve as a person's head Orisha, though you can be closely, very closely connected to your Egbe Orun. They don't serve as a head Orisha functioning in the same way that we're talking about this particular energy. Okay. And I don't think Aj can serve as a head Orisha as well. But for the most part, the other major Orishas absolutely can. Now we're going to talk about identity and choice and multiplicity when it comes to the notion of a head Orisha, because some of you guys were already asking about this before. Can you choose your head Orisha? Obviously, by now you probably all know the answer is no. You don't choose your head Orisha in the sense that when you come to Earth, that you know I get to pick and choose, like, because of the attributes that a lot of people kind of they want it that way. Like they start reading about the attributes, and this is the danger because they start learning about the Orishas from the beginning, and they see this Orisha governs this, and I want this in my life, so this is who I want to be my head Orisha, and it doesn't work like that. You have chosen your head Orisha of sorts before you came to Earth, like when you're choosing your destiny, as I said before. Because when it comes to the notion of destiny selection, in Orun, prior to you coming to the Earth, you chose to come at a certain time. You chose to come when certain astrological phenomena was occurring. All right. And with that being the case, then you kind of, got a handle on it that way. But not after you come to Earth, you can't just switch up, right? You can't just say, I want this particular Orisha to govern my head or what have you. Okay. So, this is how it goes. All right. Let's see. You are asking, can Olokun be your head Orisha? I have that covered, and yes, Olokun can be. I think you asked this on Instagram if that was you, but you asked about like the initiation. Was that you that asked that? And I was going to get to that as well. But yes, Olokun can be your head Orisha, and you can what do you call it? Initiate unto Olokun. I didn't see your question aside. You, I'm just now seeing it. Do you know why IJ can't be a head Orisha? I don't, right? Probably because everybody would have chosen IJ, right? Because IJ goes the, prosperity aspect, but I don't know why. I know, like she's a governing force for, everybody. But that being the case, that's the same thing pretty much for every Orisha. So I don't know. But that's a great question, right? Um, okay. I will just he's saying IJ is general Orisha and important to every single person. IJ can resonate with an individual than other person, but still a general Orisha. Right? So I don't know. That's just the traditional way. So who knows? But yeah, I had the same question too. Like, but I'm pretty sure everybody would be like, I want IJ. They would have chose to just come to Earth when she was, in the cosmos, really, really active at that time. So, let's see. What's the next question? Okay. Well, let's. I think I skipped the question. All right, the question isn't here, but oh no, this is correct. Sorry. While multiple orishas may influence or support a person's life, only one orisha really governs that individual's head, as I said before. Right. So that doesn't mean that you can't have multiple orishas around you, closely connected to you. Some people have so many orishas that are really, really close to them. So going back to the example of parent-child dynamic, yes, you may have one parent that is going to really govern your basic needs, your most of your needs, or what have you, as a child, and even so growing up. But the other parent could still be like really close to you. Even so, like your grandparents could play a really strong role in your life. Um, for any of you all who watch the show like Blackish, right? Is Yeah, I'm gonna use Blackish because I think it's better than the Cosby in this case. So the Cosby Show in this case. So if you think about like the show Blackish, where they grew up in a multi-generational household, and obviously the children had the parents that were there, they were really close to them. They even had siblings, right? That they were working together. The grandparents, they had one set of grandparents that actually lived in the house with them, who played a major role in their life. They even had other grandparents who were very active, even though they did not live in the same house with them. So the children still had like just really, really active guardianship holistically in their lives, but they still had, one of the primary forces, like their mother in particular, Bo on the show, she was the one who did the kind of nurturing maternal things, whereas Trey, he was masculine, he was still there in his children's life. But it was even an episode like excuse me. Excuse me, guys. There was even an episode where, they kind of flipped the script where he was trying to be like, that role. And he quickly found out like it was too much for him. So he stepped back and she fell back into that heavy maternal role. But again, there are so many other forces that were influencing those children's life that are, really great support system. And some people are like that. They have like a really, really strong spiritual support system, even though, their head Orisha is there. And there are times where they are actually closer to other members of their spiritual team than their head Orisha. And that happens again in day-to-day life, like I gave before the example. You get to a point in your life, especially in your teenage years, where your friends are more important, your teachers or what have you. You go off to college, you might not even see your parents that much, depending on the nature of the relationship and where you go and where you end up, etc. So yes, peace, peace, Libra Moon. Thank you for joining. So yes, now, next question. Is your head Orisha the same as a guardian angel, a spirit guide, patron deity, zodiac sign, etc., etc.? So I kind of got on this before. There may be some synchronicities, as I gave with the example from my own experience, among one's head Orisha and other forces from various spiritual or astrological systems. However, the notion of a head Orisha is very much so unique and specific to the Ifa tradition. Okay, there are specific ways to honor your particular head Orisha within the tradition that you're not usually going to see in those other systems, particularly the ritual work, giving the sacrifices and the offerings, and the initiation processes, etc., specific incantations, all of that. But there could be some correlations, as I gave from my own example. Twins, all right. Even so, similar to the notion of that show, they had twins there too on Blackish. Do twins or other multiples have the same head Orisha? So twins, triplets, quadruplets, and on up. Not necessarily. They can absolutely share the same head Orisha, but it's not guaranteed just by the notion that they came out as a multiple birth that they are guaranteed to have the same head Orisha. Okay. You said, is it okay in, to initiate into another Orisha before or without considering initiating to your head Orisha? Should this be consulted by Ifa? Very good question. In some cases, it is. Some cases, it may even be necessary, right? So an example would be like if you have a really strong connection to your Egbe Orun and they are like wreaking havoc in your life, you may need to go ahead and initiate unto them before you do so unto your head Orisha. Now, as far as considering initiating unto other Orisha before them, I would say that decision should be taken up through Ifa divination. Like I wouldn't just make the decision on my own, like I want to go and initiate to another Orisha before. I wouldn't recommend that. Let's just say that I would initiate to another Orisha before the head Orisha, right? But there are situations where it may be a whole nother Orisha that is governing a very important aspect of your life that you need help with immediately, and that can only be resolved through the initiation process unto that Orisha. It's okay to do so. But again, that should be heavily guided by Ifa consultation, not just a decision that you make on your own, because again, you just want to connect with the attributes of that particular Orisha. That part can be disrespectful, right? So, think about it like with your parents. If your parents, you would go to them first for whatever your needs are, as a child, I'm referring to. You don't, if you like, let's say you want a particular item or what have you. Think of an example, like a young kid. Let's say they want a toy, right? They want a specific toy, and they go to their teacher and ask their teacher to get that toy for them, and not go to their parents first and ask them for the toy. You know what would happen, right? For the most part, for an ideal parent who actually takes care of their child, they would probably be really, really upset. I know that I would be if one of my children did something like that. But there are situations again when consultation is taken, right? So let's say the parent is not doing well, or parent can't even help the child out, right? And the child goes to somebody else and asks them for a need, not like a toy, but something that they actually need, clothing, food, or shelter, or something like that. In that case, it will be okay because the parent is unable to do so. Just an example. Doesn't happen with your Reese's because they can take care of you, but there are certain situations where um, certain orishas are going to govern specific things in your life, and that's the only one, especially at that particular time, that you need to go to resolve that particular issue. And if it's an issue that has major weight on your life and it's just not going to be resolved without that initiation process, it's okay to do so. So I hope that answered your question. Stability, change, and corrections. All right. Um, can your head Orisha change over time? This is a constant question, and source of debate within the community. So no, that does not happen. Again, we're talking about the concept of a head Orisha. And as I said before, this is the force that chose your head at birth. If it happened at birth, that cannot change, right? Now, there obviously are situations where you're going to have those progressions, like I talked about before, where there are going to be other orishas or other spiritual forces. Even so, that can happen, at birth, where other spiritual forces are more prominent in your experience. But that doesn't change the fact that there was a specific force that chose your head when you were born. Now, it may be revealed much later on in your life through Ifa initiation. It's going to be confirmed through that space. And, some people don't initiate until later on in life. If you get initiated at 70 years old, that doesn't change the fact of what Orisha chose your head when you came into the earth. That part doesn't change. But there are some mitigating factors as far as which orishas are going to be more prominent in your life at that time. So again, think about even a situation at birth. When you're born, you obviously have parents, and you might have like a parent who is most dominant when you come into the earth. Your mother, but let's say soon after your birth, she, gets sick or goes into a coma or something like that and can't take care of you. And then your grandparents end up taking care of you for the most part. The dad may still be around, but he's working or what have you, trying to care for your mom. And so the grandparents are doing the majority of the nursing. That doesn't change the fact that that's still your biological mother that birthed you. It's just that you're going to have those stronger connections to your grandparents or whoever is standing in her place for that time period, whether it be temporary or even so permanent, depending on her condition. Okay. Um, what's going to change throughout your life is just your awareness level, even so your connection level with that particular head Orisha, your relationship, have how you navigate life, especially in particular moments, right? So, just like when you go and get an Ifa reading, your head Orisha may not come up at all as far as you needing to feed that spirit. And you may even just feel the energy of another Orisha really dominant or present in your life at that particular time, depending on what you're going through. Absolutely, depending on what's going on within the cosmos at that particular moment. Also, other Orishas can play a more prominent role, different stages. I said that before. I got ahead of myself there. So, why do some people experience confusion after they receive an identification of their head Orisha? Usually, guys, this happens because of misinformation, conflicting readings. Most of the time, I think it's because people oftentimes focus on certain attributes and they have mapped it out themselves because they're like this, and this, that they are a child of whatever Orisha. And no, that's just not how it works. As I said before, this is determined through Ifa divination, and it's not always that you are going to have the exact same personality traits, which I'm about to get into right now, as of your head Orisha. You're gonna be just like them, you're going to operate just like them, etc. So that was another question that I got. Does a person's personality always match their head Orisha? Like I just said, no, right? It can reflect, oftentimes it will reflect certain aspects of your head Orisha based on, your upbringing, your experiences, the presence of other spiritual forces in your life that can shift, it can change. It doesn't mean that, just because your head Orisha is Oshun, for instance, you're going to embody all of her wonderful, beautiful attributes, like the beauty and the magnetism and the love and, being financially savvy and well off, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And even so, a lot of times people are actually coming in on the opposite end of the spectrum, but they don't see that because they only want to come in on the positive end, right? Because each Orisha operates on a spectrum. Ideally, you want to be somewhere in the middle, the balance. And that's when you are in alignment with Ori. You're in alignment with your destiny. That's when you're going to experience the balance of that Orisha. Trust me, I've done a lot of work to get in that balance with Ogun's energy. But, with going back to the example of Oshun, I've talked about this before. The opposite end of Oshun, jealousy, envy that she presents. She also can present in the orientation of pride and arrogance. She can also present in the notion of somebody suffering from poverty when they are out of alignment, right? Yes, she's blessed. She gives those blessings of wealth and, attraction and magnetism. But if you're out of alignment, you may end up in a space of homelessness because you're not where you're supposed to be at that particular time. You're not properly honoring your spiritual forces. So it really just depends on the situation. Greetings, greetings. Okay, just trying to see if I got any more questions. Allow for your greetings to all, everybody who's showing up on Instagram as well. Can someone have a head Orisha whose traits seem to be the opposite of theirs? Obviously, yes. Right. When you're out of alignment, you probably going to feel out of sync heavily with your head Orisha. And if you don't understand the opposite orientation, because again, there's a heavy focus on only the positive in today's society, you probably won't even recognize that connection because you're only looking for the positive aspects of that Orisha. Do you have to follow the attributes, behaviors, or personalities traits associated with your head Orisha? So you're not required to follow all of the attributes, the positive attributes. I mean, that was the question. I'm assuming that the orientation was in the positive attributes of your head Orisha, right? In a lot of cases, you will naturally just follow some of those traits, positive or negative, to be honest with you. Again, if you're out of alignment, you probably fall into the negative aspects more so, even so than the positive. But you will naturally be inclined to either of the traits, just depending on your situation. All right. In other cases, you may not even feel connected to your head Orisha at all. A lot of times that will happen when you are actually closely connected to other forces like your Igbo room, or if you're dealing with some type of progressive energy where you're not really, your head Orisha, of course, that energy is around you, is within you, but there may be other cosmological forces that are influencing your life more heavily at that particular time. So you're not just, gelling with the energy of your head Orisha at that particular time. Most of the time it's going to happen when, your Egbe Arun connections are really, really heavy. So you might have to tend to them more so than any other spiritual force. How does one's head Orisha influence their life? All right. So you are going to see your head Orisha implemented in those repeating themes. that you have, certain challenges that you experience, right? Read a lot about your Head Orisha, the mythological narratives, if you can, because you will learn a lot about, their attributes and the struggles that they went through, based on their mythological narratives. And those stories are designed to teach, to really and truly teach us, the lessons connected to our Head Orisha. And if you read a lot about those, you'll come to understand yourself a whole lot better and how you handle situations and hold information and, just live your life holistically, right? And it can help you a lot because, again, this is about identity, understanding who you are. The more information you can get from there, the better you can live your life, okay? Because then you know who you are. What's influencing your path. You know what to watch out for. You know what to go towards because of your Head Orisha, okay? Do Head Orishas affect relationship compatibility? So, like when I guess this was more so about romantic relationships, but the reality is that it can influence dynamics in any relationship. But true compatibility within a relationship scenario, romantic, platonic, or otherwise, is ultimately determined by your character, not by just, my Head Orisha is Oshun, for instance, and your Head Orisha is Shango. So we're going to connect because those two energies were, married. That's not how it works either. It really depends on who you are holistically. And when it comes to marriage and pairings and stuff like that, it is very important for you to check to just determine the compatibility before you go into that type of commitment. That's a whole nother episode. All right. Ancestry, lineage, and background. All right. Is your Head Orisha inherited from your parents or your ancestors? So, no, as I've been saying before, your Head Orisha, this is the energy that claims your head, specifically based on your destiny. That being said, every family line has a head or governing Orisha that presides over their entire bloodline and influences their heritage. That head Orisha for your family line may be different than your specific head Orisha, right? So, you could have, like, for instance, Ogun governing your entire bloodline, but Oya may be your Head Orisha. Okay, so it just depends. And so what that looks like is obviously you're gonna be okay. The example would look like this, right? Like if your Head Orisha is your parent, then the governing Orisha for the family line will be more so like, I don't even say like just a grandparent, but like one great 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 to the umpteenth degree grandparents, because this is a ancient lineage connection, right? And so you can kind of think about it like that, like this, the family Orisha is like this really, wise sage elder within the bloodline that kind of takes care of everybody, like the concept of like Medea in the African American community, where you have this matriarch that holds the line for everybody in that family line. That's who everybody goes to and sits with, because she's that old motherly figure. You can kind of think about the family Orisha in that way, regardless of like which line she actually comes from. She just kind of holds that space. I hope that makes sense for you guys, right? So, can Egungun be considered a person's Head Orisha? Yes, it can, but it's kind of rare. It's not like something that happens frequently. Okay. And so, you can serve your bloodline and you can be really closely connected to this energy, and you really need to honor that particular Orisha force, the Egungun, which is, the ancestral spirit, that the collective ancestral spirit. So it's not just a few ancestors, but that's the collective ancestral spirit over your bloodline. look at initiation, status, and different responsibilities related to the Head Orisha functioning, right? Does knowing your Head Orisha require you to initiate unto them? This was kind of asked before. Not necessarily, right? So you can go and even so get initiated unto Ifa and never initiate unto your Head Orisha. It's completely up to you. All right. It doesn't automatically require initiation. Is your Head Orisha revealed during Isefa, which is receiving the hand of Ifa, the sacred Akin, in which we're going to feed Ifa through, or through Itefa, which is the full initiation process. So during the Isefa ceremony, receiving the hand of Ifa, you may receive your Head Orisha. It really just depends on how that temple or that elate operates. So, like if we give somebody the hand of Ifa, we do we. I think we do tell people, we talk about like that information as far as their head or what have you. I'm not sure. I was just if you were there, I was about to say we did, but I can't remember exactly right now if we give out the Head Orisha during that particular ceremony always or not. But definitely you can ask about it. It's not a big deal to get that information to you. You said, so we can choose to initiate to Ifa and Orisha, or should we initiate to Ifa first? Typically, the process is, and thank you for that question, it's a good question. Typically, the process is that you would go through Ifa initiation, especially if you're working with a Babalawo, right? If you're working with Ifa, you are going to initiate unto Ifa first, and that's where you find out your Head Orisha, which I was about to say at the time. But it may be a situation where you initiate unto your Head Orisha first, depending on who you're working with. So, and this is a source of confusion because some people are actually working with an Orisha. They're not working with Ifa, right? But they may be presenting themselves as a Babalawo or an Ianifa, or maybe you just think that they are because you're not really sure about how the tradition works at that point. And so you may actually go through an Orisha initiation first. But if you're working with an Ifa, meaning a priest or a priestess of Romula, then you would likely do Ifa initiation first, then your Head Orisha. That being said, if it comes up in divination, that is very important for you to initiate first to your Head Orisha, then you would do that first. But the typical process is Ifa first. Hope you got that. Yes, so you're saying the same thing. It depends on the Babalawo, but it depends on your choice, but it depends. Like if you're working with the Babalawo, yeah, 9 times out of 10. That Babalawo or Ianifa, they're gonna take you through Ifa initiation first because that is who they serve and they operate with. Okay. But again, it depends too on divination. All right, so also your Head Orisha is formally confirmed and fixed at Itefa, which is full on Ifa initiation. So you can get that information then. Wasn't there, but I did get this question before that just popped up in my head. So a few people actually have asked me in the past, like when you go through Ifa initiation, do you or can you rather initiate unto your Orisha then? So in traditional Isheshe, you're gonna go for the Ifa initiation ceremony. If you already know your Head Orisha and you know you want to initiate, you can initiate after. So you're gonna do the ceremony at the same time in Isheshe. So that will look like you're going through maybe about a 3-day process initiation ceremony for Ifa, and then maybe taking a day or two break, depending on how they do it at that particular temple, and then walking through the initiation ceremony for your Head Orisha. If you already know that you want to do it that way, and if you do, I strongly encourage you to have that conversation with your Ifa priest or priestess beforehand, because it's not a small thing to prepare for that reality. But it would be great, like you could go ahead and get it all done, especially if you don't want to travel back and forth like to Nigeria or something like that, or whatever the situation may be. That's initiation. This practice in West Africa. All right, I'm not referring to the Santa Maria or Lukumi practices because they are different. They usually give you everything all at once. A lot of it comes from the tradition and how it, operated in the diaspora. Because a lot of times, we're talking about slavery, right? We're talking about the slavery times where if people were getting initiated, they could not afford to wait or guess to know if that same priest would be around after they got initiated. So they would just go ahead and do everything at once. They had a whole lot more leeway in West Africa in certain parts of the continent where the integrity of the tradition was more so maintained than it was in the New World. Right. So, what responsibilities come with knowing your Head Orisha? And this is the most important part of this conversation because it's not just about knowing, it's about doing something with that knowledge. All right. So, if you find out your Head Orisha and you are given taboos connected to specifically to your Head Orisha, what you should be doing, what you should not be doing, you're gonna need to start following those sacred restrictions as soon as you know about them, right? You are expected to mirror the positive traits of your Head Orisha, obviously, and actively work to correct the shadow aspects, all right, associated with them. That's not to deny. When I say shadow, it's not like you just deny that they exist. Be aware of them and work with your Orisha to get as much as in balance as you possibly can with their energy. It's not just about knowing, it's not a flex, like I said before. It's about doing something with that knowledge so that it can actually benefit you. Because otherwise, you don't need to know it. It's not going to benefit you in any, you know, realistic way. You are responsible for gaining and understanding, learning more and more about that Orisha. So, studying, getting knowledge, getting information, and constantly trying your best to stay in balance with that wisdom so that you can live the best possible life that you can live. You can fulfill your destiny. You said, oh, wow, I didn't know that. What do you mean? Are you referring to about the initiation process for the leukemia, things like that? Alrighty, so do taboos apply before initiation? So in some cases, yes, definitely. You're going to have the taboos if you know them. They're revealed through divination. Some things, what your taboos apply to you regardless of your initiation status. It's just that you come to know your permanent taboos once you actually get initiated. That being said, you can know, I don't really want to use the word temporary because, like, when you get your hand of Ifa, you can receive taboos then. They may or may not be temporary. You really don't know until you go through full initiation because it could be the same exact set of taboos that apply when you receive your hand of Ifa to when you actually go through the full initiation ceremony. That being said, they can change somewhat. So it really just depends. But point being, you can go ahead and get that information beforehand. All right. You said as far as how slavery affected the initiation process here compared to West Africa, absolutely. There's so much nuance. Thank you for pointing that out too, because there's so much nuance, and that's why the discrepancies happen within the traditions. Do head orishas require um, dietary restrictions, right? So not automatically, but they can be part of your taboos. So again, like knowing your head orisha, getting that information, be prepared for that reality. May not be something that even impacts you at all. Like, I don't really care because that's not something that I do anyway. That being said, you at that point have to be much more cognizant of it Because the thing about it is, you may not eat certain things on a regular, but you don't always know what's in the food that you're consuming if you do not cook all of your meals. And even so, when you do cook all your meals, if you eat a lot of processed foods, you don't always know what's in those foods, right? So, um, these are not going to be based off of stereotypes too. Let me say that. So if you do have any type of dietary restrictions or any other taboos that come along with your Head Orisha, this is going to be based on divination, what you received during divination. This is not you going online and just looking up what are the taboos associated with XYZ Orisha, right? Because you probably can find that information plentiful online, but all of that won't apply to you, and you don't want it to all apply to you. Like you do not want to get a full-on list of all the taboos for your particular Head Orisha to apply to you, because that's more for you to navigate in life. Okay, you must receive divination to know the reality of that. Okay. Okay, you said you know this is off topic, but do all women have their head shaved during initiation? I'll answer it real quick. In Isheshe, yes, that is the standard practice for women to have their head shaved, men and women. I know why you're saying women, because yeah, I don't know if you're a female or not, but you may not want that to be your reality. But in Isheshe practice in West Africa, that is the standard protocol. In the diaspora, sometimes they, make allowances. I'm gonna keep it clean. They make allowances. Okay, you don't want all of Obatu's taboo. Absolutely not. And Obatu is actually one of the more difficult Orishas just in general, because Obatu is, the king of the white cloth, concerned with high level purity, right? And so, just by default of being a child of Obatu, it's just some things you cannot do or participate in easily, right? So yeah, you're saying no drinking, right? You gotta limit your drinking, wearing the white all the time. You don't have to wear white all the time, but it will be better for you, the cleaner you get. No red and just some other things that go on, right? Do you have to wear certain colors for your head, Orisha? So again, this too, not automatically, just depends on the situation. There are some Orishas, like I was just saying, Obatala, right, that are known to require their children to avoid wearing certain colors. So if you're a child of Obatala, you don't want to wear red if that's your favorite color. Yeah, you might have some issues going on there, but that's the reality of it. That's why I say don't be so quick to rush to know these things or to do certain things in the tradition, because they come with responsibilities. And if you're not ready for that reality, it's no need. If you know that you like to participate in certain behaviors and you're not ready to let go of that reality, you may have a hard time, learning your Head Orisha, learning about the taboos connected with them. And yeah, then you catch some problems, some real problems, right? You guys, yeah, everybody's like, oh, Batula don't play. Oh, Batula's my Head Orisha. Um, yes. You said he required all my red clothing. Are you saying he required you to not wear any any red clothing, or are you saying that he requires you to wear all red clothing? I didn't fully get that. So, what happens if someone knows their Head Orisha but doesn't follow Ifa? Right. So, I mean, you can continue to live your life. You just know sometimes it happens. We've had people come get readings. I want to know my Head Orisha. They do it. They don't really practice the tradition. They just know about it and they're just curious and they want to know their Head Orisha. Right. But that being said, if you choose to ignore guidance that comes from that information, whatever knowledge you get during that particular time, um, that's connected to your destiny, you're probably going to have even more problems, right? Because when you know something, it's even worse than when you just don't know, what you don't know. A lot of times the Orisha will definitely give you a whole lot of grace in those areas. But once you start to know, you go get a reading, you're told don't do this, and you decide you want to do it anyway, you probably gonna have a whole lot more problems from that, right? Um, and you said you're a female with a head full of hair. Oh my, yes, ma'am. I mean, there are some diaspora practitioners, like I said, that probably would be okay, or they would make allowances, even though that's not traditional practice for you not to get your head shaved. But if you are dealing with somebody in like Nigeria or other parts of West Africa who tell you that, then like they are probably scamming you because that's not how the tradition goes in that part of the world. Okay. You said my local potential Oluwo is unreachable and I can't afford travel for yourself. You don't have to travel for Isefa. Isefa is receiving the hand of Ifa. I don't know if you meant Itefa. Itefa is full initiation. And hey, maybe you can find someone else locally if that's a limitation for you. Okay. Oh, you're saying as an offering, Danny BX. Now you had to give up all of your red clothing. Yes, yes, very common with children of Obatala. I actually initially thought my head Orisha was Obatala. I didn't necessarily want it because I know Obatala like demands like some has some real demands that I didn't know if I was ready for it at that particular time in my life. Rumila told me to stop smoking, but it seems impossible. So maybe you need to do some energetic balancing. You might could take some coaching that can help you out with that. Because if you're told not to do something, there are remedies in the tradition that can help you with those dynamics. They're not going to tell you don't do something and not provide a way for it. So it could even look like elbow. You might just give certain elbow to help you balance that out energetically and help you out with overcoming some habits because there are some great remedies for it, whether it be elbow or a crochet, whew, that can help you out a whole lot. Right, I've seen people overcome addictions with certain crochet, so for sure. You say I'm in the UK and there's no one, so I would have to travel. I got you. Yeah, that's a reality, a real reality in the UK because I work with quite a few people there. So, yeah, you can still make it happen. It doesn't have to be right away. Talk to the Orishas and ask them to provide a way for it to happen. They will. If you are sincere, they will provide a way for it. All right, so this crazy. I want this revealed Obata to me. Red used to be my favorite color a few years ago. I'm excited for this journey nonetheless. That's funny too, because my favorite color was red as well. I have a situation with wearing white. I'm supposed to wear more white. That's why you always see me this way, and that's because of my Igbe Arun group. It's not because of a connection with Obatala, and I think Oshun too requires white or something. I can't remember exactly who. I know something about my Igbe. But anyway, yeah, it has changed my life though, wearing more white. Because I used to wear red most of the time. And yeah, had a lot of anger and aggression in me. And I can say it has changed me a whole lot. Yes. Um, It is difficult. There are some difficulties. I got you. I mean, addiction is hard. Addiction is a reality for so many people in so many different ways. But there are ways to overcome it. There is spiritual medicine that can absolutely help you overcome addiction. I've seen a whole lot of people overcome addiction through different forms of spiritual medicine. You're saying red was your favorite color too. Everybody love red. Yeah. I think I was attracted to that fire, that heat. Whew. He said, I've been at my altar asking for Yeye Oshun and my Igbe to make a way. Just keep, doing what you do. Keep staying strong. It'll happen when it's supposed to happen. Remember, everything is about destiny. That's another thing. We all have our time to do what we were meant to do in this lifetime. Can a child of Olokun be initiated? So we answered that earlier. Definitely, if you're a child of Olokun, you can go through that process. Working with your head Orisha. All right. So a few more questions in this area, a few questions in this area, brother. Do you need to feed your head Orisha every time you get an Ifa reading? Not necessarily. Your head Orisha may not even come up as, doing anything for you at that particular time. It really just depends on the astrological events that are going on, where they are in the cosmos, how close they are to you, what you need from them, what they need to do for you, so many different things. So it's not always that way. It's not like, you get your head Orisha and every time you have to feed them. All right. But you can feed them if you want to, right? So anytime you desire to, Babalawo Yanifa can feed your head Orisha for you anytime you desire. You just, it just comes up. I really want to feed this spirit right now. You can do that. There's no restrictions to that either. Um, he said, my order will be duly guided. Ashe, Ashe. Can you feed your head Orisha on your own? Generally, no. If you are not an Ifa priest, priestess, Olorisha, or something like that, even so, most like in Nigeria, that's just not a thing for even priests or what have you to feed Orishas on their own behalf. They feed it on other people's behalf. They obviously know how to do it, but usually their Babalawo, because they have a Babalawo or an Ianifa, will feed the Orishas on their behalf. And I know this question comes from usually people, again, in Santeria, Lukami, going back to the whole thing about the slavery dynamic. People were taught to do these things on their own because of that dynamic, because they had to move fast. There was no guarantee that the person would be around to continue these tasks for them. So they had to really dig into tradition and do those things on their own. But that's not a thing in Isheshe for people to feed, like do sacrifices and offerings. Now, obviously, you can't feed offerings, like specific offerings that that your Orisha accepts through that pot or icon, but it's very specific to what you can do there. You're not going to be feeding the pot blood sacrifices on your own. Usually, if you're practicing with somebody who is doing the tradition in Nigeria, you might be doing it on your own if you're working with somebody in the diaspora. But again, that's not truly traditional practice. Okay. And if you don't know the protocol, I would so advise you not to try that process because you can cause yourself a whole lot of problems there. However, if you do, like I said before, if you have this sacred vessel, definitely you can do the acceptable offerings that you have been told to give. Because even so, like the offerings that you're told to give to your icon on your own, they're more expensive offerings than that. Sometimes they have to be cooked. It could be so many different things that you probably can't even get in the Americas, so forth, so on, certain incantations that you need to say, etc. So you really need to be skilled in that process. Is it risky to work with your head Orisha without guidance? It definitely can be. Okay, so you want to be careful there. You want the proper guidance. I do not advise anybody to just go online and look up, do you know your head Orisha, and you just start looking up how to give offerings to Umoya, for instance. No, like that's not the best thing in the world at all. All right. I don't advise you to do that. You want to go and work with somebody who knows what they are doing so that they can guide you in that particular process. Usually this is going to require, not usually, in Isheshe, this requires you to have a sacred vessel for you to go and start to feed your head Orisha on your own. In Isheshe is not a thing that you go and leave offerings out in nature at random places without you understanding the wisdom and the knowledge and the protocol behind these types of processes. Okay, there are certain situations where you give things in nature, but it's very much so based on a protocol and so forth. But I just don't advise anybody to go online and just start reading information and like I'm gonna do this because this is what this article said or this website it says. As I've said many times, a lot of the information for the tradition, even though it's presented as Isheshe, absolutely comes from the diaspora versus coming from um, West Africa or what have you. Okay, a lot of the blog posts and articles, etc., come from the diaspora. And you might be able to go on Facebook and get some things. I still don't recommend that. I don't care where you're looking, like go and talk to somebody who knows what they're doing and can help you understand the tradition better. What are the benefits of knowing your Head Orisha? Obviously, it can provide you with a greater sense of who you are, as I said before. It gives you knowledge of your spiritual DNA, so to speak, that cosmic level DNA. So it gives you an understanding of your temperament, of why you act the way you act, why you do the things you do, why you think the way you think, and obviously your purpose. Like, what did you come here to learn on this earth? You gain knowledge of your guardian spirit, who is your primary advocate, right? Again, just like your parent, it's your primary advocate for you. And so it's going to shield you from also those negative energy and spiritual attacks. That's what your parents are there for. They're gonna, take care of you, especially when you're younger. And even as you grow up, depending on the parent, they still will get down on you if you mess with their child or what have you. So that's the same notion there. So it's important for you to know and again to develop a connection with your Head Orisha. It's not just knowing, it's developing that connection so that you can avail a lot of the benefits that comes with working with the head, your Head Orisha. You develop a deeper understanding of your adverse, even so internal patterns and how to overcome them. Well, why do I keep dealing with this particular pattern or behavior in my life? Study the Orisha, understand how they can understand the symbology of it more so, because those are mythological narratives designed to teach lessons, right? To give you knowledge about yourself, about them, and and so that you can live a better life holistically. All right, so some emotional beginner concerns here. So some people were like, well, why do I feel disappointed, right? And what do I do when I feel disappointed about my Head Orisha? Usually the disappointment just comes from you having certain expectations around who you wanted your Head Orisha to be. It could also come from going back to that notion of being told that by different people that you have different Head Orishas. So you might get excited, you get this information from one person for whatever reason. Down the road you might go to someone else, or like in my case, it could be the same person that tells you that you have a different Head Orisha at a later point in your journey. And so that can cause disappointment because you're like, what? Right? And it can cause a lot of confusion and frustration because then you don't really know what direction to take. All right. But regardless of the disappointment, why you're disappointed, rather, you should work as soon as possible to try to overcome that disappointment and just try to, connect with their force so that you can live a better life and you can align with your destiny because that's what it's there for. I understand the disappointment. You have a right to be disappointed when you are getting conflicting information, especially now. If you're disappointed because you wanted a specific Orisha, that's on you. But that's just the reality of what it is. How long does it take to build a relationship with your Head Orisha? Not a fixed timeline, right? The closer you draw near to their force, the more you try your best to connect with their force, the stronger that connection is going to be. It's just like any other relationship that you form in on earth or with any spiritual force. All right. The more time you spend, giving it offerings, feeding it, talking to their energy, asking for guidance, following its guidance, the more you're gonna connect with it and the shorter the time frame for you to connect with it, with your Head Orisha. Greetings, greetings. Thank you for showing up. Yvette, good to have you. Really good to have you. I was about to say your other handle name. I realized you was on a different one today. So, Ori alignment. So we're gonna get to this real quickly, and I'm gonna close up probably in the next 10 minutes, guys. If you have any more questions, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat window on whatever platform you may be on. So, Ori is the primary authority over your destiny, as I said before. Your head Orisha functions to support Ori, just like you or yourself, your parent in the physical realm is here to help support and guide you, but you still make the final decision in your life. Right? Even as a child, you have a right to behave or misbehave. You might be misbehaving through forces that you can't control, but you still have that functionality. All right. Alignment with your Ori determines how effectively your Head Orisha can assist you in your daily life, like I've said before. So you want to focus on Ori alignment, and through Ori alignment, you are naturally going to begin to align with your Orishas. That doesn't mean that you don't need to communicate with or develop a relationship with your Head Orisha, because you should. I mean, you can. It is very much so beneficial to you if you do so, right? It's that extra support, right? The more you develop those connections with your spiritual team, the more support you have. Same way in the physical realm. The more you network with people and you develop strong relationships with them, the more you support you have when you need something. Your Head Orisha doesn't replace your own personal responsibility and accountability, though, right? As much as I would love to say, boom, is my Head Orisha. So that's why I get angry. That's why, you know, I say some of the things that I say. Yes, that energy plays a role in it, but Ogun is not at fault. And I got to take responsibility for the words that come out of my mouth. And, I've learned absolutely to do that. Same with anybody else, regardless of who your Head Orisha is. All right. If you're ignoring Ori while focusing solely on your Head Orisha, you're usually going to have some challenges because you will be in misalignment. You're saying before you close, do you do mentorship? For some of us, this place once in the UK jungle. Absolutely. We have mentorship services. You can find them on the website, asanee44.com. It's going to come up later. So you can definitely reach out to us for that. We offer Ifá mentorship, spiritual coaching, Ori alignment coaching, a number of things on the website. Let's see. You said you're most welcome. Okay, thank you, Yvette. All right, so walking the path of Ifá, guys. Understand that your Head Orisha is revealed to support your destiny, not to focus on your identity, not to focus on hierarchy, your public affiliations. Oh, I'm a child of whoever, fill in the blank. Like, that's not what it's for. It's about alignment at the end of the day. Ifá divination is a way for you to help you gain a better understanding of who your Head Orisha is and other spiritual connections that you should be cultivating so that you can live the best life that you possibly can live while you're taking your earthly sojourn. You want to treat this knowledge of your Head Orisha as functional guidance meant to help you to align, as I've already said. So as always, guys, if you are seeking deeper transformation, you're ready to explore more about living in alignment with the Ifá tradition, visit us at asanee44.com. This is the web address that I was just telling you about. This is the way it's spelled. Even so, click on that link at the top if you can. Well, you're on Instagram, so you're probably on the phone. But you guys can I think you can even screenshot it. Matter of fact, you probably can't even see it. Just realize that. So this is what I am referring to. So if you're on Instagram, you can screenshot it and grab the QR code up there, and it'll take you to, I think that's the IFA spirituality page on our website. That QR code link right there. That's what it'll take you to. If it doesn't take you specifically to that one, it takes you somewhere on my website, and then you can navigate from there. Alrighty. So next live stream, I do want to talk about practicing IFA solo because I get a lot of questions about this, and so I'll be presenting, an opportunity for you guys to even ask more questions the week before we do it. So definitely, I will meet you next time. Thank you all who showed up and just asked such great questions and stayed with me. I really, really appreciate you all, your energy during this particular session. So, with that being said, Ashe, guys, please have a very blessed and beautiful day and beyond.